Between multiple attraction removals and intense IP integration projects, the Disney parks are constantly changing, and it really does seem that no attraction or area is safe. If you've seen my Should Dinoland Be Saved video, you'll know that Dinoland USA, currently located in Animal Kingdom in Orlando, Florida, is the company's next victim, with park leadership openly discussing ideas to overhaul the area multiple times over the past few years, including at public panels and, following the finalisation of the initial script for this video, announcing both the replacement and the closure dates of the area. Shockingly, despite my original concerns, the area somehow made it to the end of the year, and is set to close in sections, beginning in January 2025 with an announced replacement featuring characters from Encanto and Indiana Jones. Previously, rumours had swirled about a Moana replacement, but the final plans were announced at the 2024 D23 event. As such, as an avid Dinoland fan and the self-appointed president of the Dinoland USA fan club, I have taken matters into my own hands and have decided to propose an alternative overhaul for Dinoland USA. I have so many thoughts and feelings about the inclusion of the properties mentioned above, which needn't be mentioned here, but regardless of whether I'm creating this out of delusional hope, I would love to see dinosaurs continuing their reign at Animal Kingdom, hence why this video is coming into fruition. Before we get into some of the operational and hypothetical bits, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jo, and I talk a lot about things in the theme park and tourism sphere, plus some other fun bits and pieces here. If you're interested in this kind of thing, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any of the fun upcoming content, but let's get into it. As an integral part of the opening day vision, Dinoland USA offers a link to animals of the past which is not explored elsewhere in the park, and I believe that's a really valuable and engaging addition to have in Animal Kingdom. So in this creative project, I'll mix both original and familiar ideas to propose a new potential direction for the area, redesigning Dinoland to something fresh with new rides and a deepened lore. Featuring never-before-seen high-quality artwork, this is also a major labour of love for me and will be a bit ropey in places. And on this, just to lay the foundations, there have been a few constraints on the project. The first being time, as I am acutely aware of Dinoland's impending doom. And while I'd love it not to be doomed so soon, there is a reason I'm making this video now. As a rule, I'm someone who is, where possible, very detail-oriented, but in this case I'm having to take a bit more of a bare-bones approach in some of my suggestions, including the associated artwork. I'd love to have extended this to include restaurants and shops, but that's something I'd have to put on the back burner for now to keep the focus on the attractions and the overall land narrative instead. And the second constraint is skill. While I love storytelling, art and idea discussions, I am not a concept artist, and at this point in my life experience and while I'm still building those skills, I'm not even going to pretend that I am. But with the best of my ability and a little bit of help from some questionably generated dinosaurs, I've tried to convey my ideas in an interesting and digestible way. If the budget existed, I would outsource to someone much more competent than me, but in the meantime, you've got my handiwork instead. So without further ado, I present to you Dinoland USA Reborn. Everything will become a lot clearer as we go along, but I think it's important to offer a bit of context for the land going into this discourse. The current story for the area goes something like this. Dinoland USA emerged as the result of scientific developments in the area. The local research hub, the Dino Institute, was being visited by a lot of people who were eager for the opportunity to trial time travel, and wanted to take one of the centre's research trips back to the Cretaceous period to see real-life dinosaurs. Seeing an opportunity to capitalise off the growing interest in the Dino Institute's research, local entrepreneurs Chester and Hester opened up Dinorama, a roadside attraction/tourist trap. Meanwhile, interns over at the Dino Institute also saw an opportunity to earn some extra money, opening Restaurantosaurus, which also doubled as a recreational base/living space for them. If you look, you can find pieces of this narrative scattered around the land, but lots of people argue that it isn't too clearly demonstrated, but rather feels disjointed, cheap and tacky. The way I perceive it, tonally, Dinoland is a bit cynical and tongue-in-cheek, yet also layered, and I hope to follow a similar subtle route in this proposal. Here, Dinoland USA, including Dinorama, the Dino Institute and all the associated land and outlets, have been purchased by a company known as Dino Tours. The Dino Tours company proudly boasts that they're the industry leaders in recreational dino tourism, utilising revolutionary technology and pioneering research to offer a new wave of time travel adventures. Beyond their research hub, they offer related products to showcase the history of dino tourism in its many guises. From archaeological sites to dinosaur-inspired attractions, zoological displays of ancestors and demonstrations, these outdated products are offered specifically to showcase how impressive their new work is compared to the old, existing stuff. During some of the negotiations, the paleontologists who originally worked in the Dino Institute were brought into the Dino Tours research team, finding it easier to secure funding and work under the leadership of a for-profit tourism organisation which, combined with other factors we'll discuss soon, led to the eventual closure of the Dino Institute as a research facility. Over the last decade, Dino Tours grew into a well-renowned leisure and recreation startup group built on the research of those who came before it. So here we have what is effectively their World Expo, a preview and showcase to garner attention and earn some extra funds. The base has a feeling of permanence but definitely isn't meant to be there forever, just long enough to fit the desired purpose and achieve their goals. Now that you're up to speed with the general idea, let's explore the implementation of this. As you first enter Dinoland, you'll notice a familiar sight as the Boneyard has survived yet another round of cuts. This area, described by Disney as an open-air space designed to look like a dinosaur dig, is currently a recreational edutainment space, combining playground elements with dinosaur fossils to create a fun, open space for younger guests to play. In addition to the playground structures, there is a large undercover sandpit area with discoverable fossils. While you may be asking yourself, why would I pay $169 to play in a sandpit? And subsequently ask, why would millions of dollars be invested into a regeneration project, only for said glorified sandpit to remain? I want to advocate for the area. Not only does it make an excellent interactive entrance area, but it also offers shaded spots which are seldom found elsewhere in the hot open-air park that is Animal Kingdom. Additionally, the Boneyard offers a valuable quieter space away from the busy, crowded bustle of the parks, and offers a place to run around freely. You can hear a little bit more about my defence of the Boneyard in my previously mentioned Should Dinoland USA video. As for integration into the new land narrative, it wouldn't be too hard to update the space to make it feel a little bit more fitting. We could say it's all about encouraging a new generation of excavators and in high season, offer interactive sessions led by trained professional paleontologists. But otherwise, I think it's pretty self-explanatory and doesn't need too much else added. This could also be a wonderful opportunity to do some crowd eating, with the addition of some bleacher seating in the separated undercover excavation site. A thinly veiled similar version of this idea was actually implemented back in 1998, in the form of the Fossil Preparation Lab. Before it was replaced by Chester and Hester's Dinorama, guests were able to circle around a functioning lab to see real scientists from the Chicago Field Museum conducting work on the fossil of Sue the dinosaur. Guests were also able to ask questions to an attendant, see close-ups of the bone cleaning and casting process on monitors. The attraction lasted no more than a year, but adds some extra validity to this proposed extension of the Boneyard's offerings, in which guests would be able to learn more about archaeological practices. Pulling this further into the new story for the land, the Boneyard showcases the origins of dinosaur research and gives younger guests a tangible opportunity to learn about what came before the current generation of research. With play areas and sandpits, the Boneyard also presents archaeology as comparable to children's playthings, playing into the superior and undermined nature of the dinosaurs company that I'm trying to present. So, as you follow further into the land, you'll enter Chester and Hester's Dinorama area, which currently houses a number of interactive paid games and Triceratops Spin. Previously, the space also used to hold Primeval Whirl until its closure back in 2020. It definitely felt a lot fuller and more complete with this ride, so as part of this development, we're going to try and bring that feeling back to the area. Much like today, Chester's and Hester's will serve as the main focal point of the land, full of kinetics, beautiful fauna, and exciting visual rides. I'll save most of the Chester and Hester's lore for another video, but for now we need to know the following. Dinoland is currently split into two distinct sections. Firstly, exploring dinosaurs as a kitsch commodity, this being the case here in Chester and Hester's, and secondly, dinosaurs as a tourist attraction, which is seen over in Dinosaur. In this new version of Dinoland, we'll also see very similar ideas presented. Between the grand, modern Dinosaurs building you'll see looming in the background, and the fun, high-speed attractions we'll have in this space, there'll be a clear divide between how we view dinosaurs now, and how we could view them should science and investment allow. There'll also be a few visual changes to the landscape. Instead of the relatively flat, mostly static area that you see today, this new design will utilise a lot of height and kinetic elements, as well as using materials to further the narrative, with primarily wooden structures used in the present area, countered by the bright, sleek, shiny modern look of the Dinosaurs exhibition of the future. I've really gone back and forth about whether to keep Chester and Hester's in this area, as I know an awful lot of people have an awful lot of things to say about it, and maybe it is its time to go. So this section, mainly because I haven't exactly figured out what I want to do, is a little bit up in the air. But, as I alluded to controversially, I think it would be good to keep in the land. I'm thinking take out the signage, take out the cardboard cutouts, even some of the games, but not all of the games, and you have a section of land which works really well as a transitional piece and actually ties in nicely with the message I'm trying to convey. Again, this becomes clearer as you get into the land, but I like the idea of having it in stages, almost like a living timeline to represent our relationship with dinosaurs in the capitalist setting. I'm thinking we start with the discovery phase and progressively become more sophisticated and immersive as we go through the land. We have the discovery period in the form of the Boneyard, we then have the origins of kitschy tacky tourism in Dinorama, the more sophisticated but not quite there feel with the attractions that I'm about to discuss, and then the real deal at the end with the Dinosaurs facility, but again, more on that soon. In consideration of this, my plan is to keep Triceratops Spin around, not only as it's cute, but also because it acts as a family attraction, which is really important for the area and the broader park. I also plan to keep a couple of the games, as I think the tongue-in-cheek names, the puns, everything like that just fits in really nicely. The only thing I think we would need to work on if we were to keep Dinorama would be to make the narrative clearer, which is a bit of a problem that exists at the moment, but I'm not sure I want to do that explicitly through signage. So what I have in my mind to strike a balance is a walking path, complete with different markers on the floor. It would start at the entrance of the land, and while it would end up looking a little bit like the old Magic Kingdom walk around the world pavers, these plaques would weave through the footpaths, operating as a timeline for those who want to look. I do have a lot more fleshed out ideas as we get further into the video. This one I just haven't quite decided on, so do be sure to let me know in the comments what you would do and how you would navigate this specific area, which feels like it should go, but also like it should stay. But circling back to our key attractions in this space, we'll have the Excavator, an outdoor wooden coaster, Dino Flights, a Pteranodon Flyer Galactica Superman-esque coaster, and Dinosaurs, a dark Omnimover with animatronic elements which will utilise space in the current Dino Institute building. There's also one final secret attraction which requires a bit more narrative explanation, but we'll cover that in detail a little bit later. So let's begin with the Excavator. There's a really good video by Poseidon Entertainment that was released a short while ago, featuring a plot for a potential excavator ride. So in their version of the ride, there's a big emphasis on time travel with indoor and outdoor sections, but mine's just going to be all outdoors, operating as a simple themed wooden coaster. If you haven't already seen their video, definitely recommend watching it afterwards, as it's great, it's really fun. But if you have already seen that video, you'll know that the Excavator isn't an original idea for either of us, but rather a ride slated to open with the park back in 1998. While beautiful concept art exists, the attraction never made it to the opening day lineup or debuted in the park at all. Sources suggest that the original proposed story for the ride was that the Dino Institute staff would use minecarts to transport fossils, and you, whether by invitation or mistake, ended up testing the system out. Littered with hazards and warning signs, this minecart-esque ride would take you on a fast-paced adventure full of physical twists and turns. For this proposal, the main storytelling of the land will occur through the Dinosaurs company affiliation itself, so I'm happy to keep the proposed story for the ride the same, only tweaking it slightly to take out some of that element of danger. Now safe, yet still fast-paced, this minecart ride will show you dinosaurs as we know them today, taking riders through a space filled with life-size fossils and dig sites, while playing into the broader narrative as well. Here, the Excavator was a product of Dinosaurs, again intentionally introduced to highlight the sophistication of their modern product compared to the rudimentary practices of the past and present, showing how, not so long ago, the only way humans could interact with dinosaurs was through fossils. Once again, this high-tech company is driving the foundations of its own industry. I really wanted to pay homage aesthetically to both the original concepts and the modern recommendations by integrating rockwork and fossils, but also wanted to create enough of a distinction that it didn't feel too Big Thunder Mountain-y. As such, it would end up looking a bit like an intensified version of Dreamland Margate's Scenic Railway in terms of shape, with the rise and fall of the coaster shaped to look like a Brachiosaurus and the dip sections diving through enclosed dino bones, as in the concept art. This attraction will be the most family-friendly thrill ride in the park, with a lower intensity and therefore a lower height restriction than Expedition Everest. Realistically, it will be very reminiscent of Seven Dwarfs Mine Train in Magic Kingdom, whilst maintaining a sense of identity and excitement relevant to Dinoland. Next up, seen flying above the Excavator and through the trees, is Dino Flights. Originally I planned to have the mine train as the more thrilling attraction in the area, and then this attraction as a family-friendly option. But I decided against this as I thought it could be fun to have a flying ride in a Disney park, and that doesn't really exist yet. I did realise, however, that after coming up with it, it did unfortunately end up being very similar to Universal Studio Japan's The Flying Dinosaur. So if you see any similarities there, don't worry about that. This ride is effectively a medium-sized flying coaster which takes guests on the flight of a lifetime, full of twists and turns above and through the trees, flying just like the Cretaceous dinosaurs would. I was a little bit nervous about having two outdoor rides in Central Florida with the weather being as unpredictable as it is, but eventually justified it with the presence of outdoor coasters and flying attractions in not only competing parks like SeaWorld and Universal, but also Disney itself. One thing that has been addressed in recent years is the effect of weather on Animal Kingdom, and how prior to the opening of Pandora, there was a massive problem with not being anything to do when it rained. But I've further addressed the potential displacement of people with the indoor crowding attractions that we'll be discussing next. Narratively, this coaster would work as a transition piece in the present to future Dinosaurs pipeline, representing a more significant and sophisticated way to interact with dinosaurs in the Excavator, and allowing people to see how it would have been to have flown alongside them. A step beyond the previous show and tell of the Excavator towards an experience, this ride puts guests right in the centre of the action and allows them to feel rather than just see. but videos and posters in the ride queue would make sure guests were aware that there were better, more immersive experiences on the horizon just within the Dinosaurs building. The ride would have no real story beyond this for the same reason as the Excavator, which is that its purpose would be to contribute to the narrative without really offering anything else. And truthfully, I think that Fly Like a Dinosaur is just a really cool ride concept anyway. Thriller fillers aside, it's time to get into the storytelling attractions, of which there will be two. The aforementioned Dinosaur's Omnimover attraction will take place in the same show building as the Dino Institute Final Mission, which we will cover very, very shortly. And these will be our kind of big ticket rides for the land. Please note, I do have full ride scripts written for both attractions, but we'll be saving those for later as I daren't share them just yet. So to start, allow me to present Dinosaurs. We've already established the pivotal role that Dinosaur's company plays in the new development of Dinoland, and I'd like to explain a little bit more about the company and how it operates now that we're finally here. Towards the back of the Dinorama space, you'll see a large towering structure built with sleek, bright windows and open spaces, a far cry from the concrete facility that the Dino Institute tour teams operated out of previously. As the apex predator of dino tourism, the Dinosaurs company have completely redesigned the playing field, turning something that was originally intended to at least half function as a scientific research endeavour into a private product reserved for the elite. Capitalising on the work of researchers past, the Dinosaurs company took the time travel tourism model established by the Dino Institute and built on it, potentially unethically, without considering the consequences of their actions. To quote another dinosaur-related researcher, their investors were so preoccupied with whether they could that they didn't stop to consider if they should. This idea takes inspiration from, again, unused concept art, which depicted a walking track behind the Dinosaur then Countdown to Extinction attraction. Think an enclosed version of Dinosaur World with more fauna. I loved the idea of having two partially interacting attractions running concurrently in the same space, and the value of operating a high-capacity attraction should never be underestimated, especially in a space-conscious park like Animal Kingdom. Split into two tracks, Mission Space style, Dino Tours will allow guests to decide if they'd like to take the Green Tour, a gentle, family-friendly exploration, or the Orange Tour, marketed as an intense, up-close and personal tour, which may well have an unexpected turn. With a bit of a backward and sideways expansion, it could easily take place in the existing Dinosaur building opposite the track, and run in a figure-8 shape on an Omnimover system. To clarify, the green and orange tracks would load in the same area before halfway through, splitting depending on the chosen ride path, with the orange path extending further out. Whether riders would be seen in clamshell vehicles like in Haunted Mansion, or spherical vehicles like those in Jurassic World, they'd be guided through a Cretaceous wilderness viewing docile dinosaurs in contained conditions reminiscent of zoo enclosures. An edutainment safari situation? Guests will learn about the physical characteristics, lifestyles and evolutionary gains of these dinosaurs. The green trail will end there, simply showcasing the dinosaurs, but in the orange trail, guests will continue on and face an unexpected twist when a perimeter breach is announced over the system. Alarms will sound and guests will be able to encounter dinosaurs in their true natural habitats, where they'll witness fighting, predatory behaviour and maybe even come face to face with a life-size creature. I've got this idea that in the last room there'd be a huge animatronic with guests so close to the dinosaur they can feel the heat and the moisture of the predator's breath. The intention of this ride, along with the land, is to reframe our relationships with animals, considering the darker sides, including how we trivialise predators, how we control and present animals in a way that is not so much about coexisting and maintaining harmony, but rather using them as trophies and show things, and how, perhaps, there are certain animals that we should be afraid of, while exploring ideas such as subdued captivity and the impact of this on animals. It will have some layered storytelling for those who want to analyse it, but otherwise it could just be enjoyed as a surface level attraction, further demonstrating its point. The interesting thing about the ideas explored in the redesigning process is how vastly they change from the beginning, which is especially true of the Dinosaurs narrative. What initially started out as an across-the-board criticism of the financial stakes of science, and how it's less about actual significant development and discovery, but rather how much money can be made off the developments, has shifted its focus to something different. In the earlier stages, I knew I wanted the Dino Institute to have fallen. Not only because I love the aesthetics and the history of abandoned buildings, but because it just felt right to keep it as a nod to the past of the past. Since then, while still staying in the same subgenre of man versus dino versus science, it grew into more of a people-focused story than an animal one, which may feel odd when you consider the Animal Kingdom mantra that you'll hear myself and other people parroting all the time. This concept for the Dino Institute is tough to justify as it's not overtly animal-related, but I think these are the consequences of the plight for knowledge and animal understanding and how the world responded when it failed still fits under that umbrella. If you haven't seen the parallels already, the concept for the land can be linked to real-life examples of this. In recent years, the consumer taste for experiences have changed, with the wealthy funding projects to space and to the deep sea that only the super rich can justify taking. While scientific research does have a history of being funded by the aforementioned super rich, there are areas where science is being considered more of an industry, a profit machine, and even a private enterprise. And at its core, the ride is a response to this. It's an exploration of how eventually, when you keep pushing for bigger and better, things can go badly. And then when they do, it's viewed as a tragic mistake, and we just keep pushing onwards. This version of Dinosaur is a stark contrast to the sleek and modern aesthetics and optimistic attitudes to private time travel that you'll see elsewhere in the area. So, to summarise, you'll still see dinosaurs, and the plans to have it backing onto the hyper-consumerist, high-tech Dinosaur's Omnimover still stands, but the Dino Institute will take the original concept in a slightly different direction. Whether it will be a short-term transitional attraction which contributes to the lore, thus achieving the goal of looking at finance-driven research a bit more cynically, or would end up as a permanent fixture, I hope that it will provide an opportunity for discussion, and an investigation into the harder side of the good. So, with love and pride, I present to you Dinosaur Final Mission. This version of the ride opens the door to more lore and shares how the land we see came to be. The update maintains the sense of rebellion, mischief and optimism seen in today's incarnation of Dinosaur, but explores what came after Dr. Seeker had guests retrieve the iguanodon. After convincing his superiors that he should be able to keep his job, the Dino Institute gained some interest from companies eager to bring back more dinosaurs, and those eager to utilise the time travel technology that had been created. As I mentioned before, there are many real-life examples of research being subsidised by tourism, as was the case with the Dino Institute, where Dr. Marsh was encouraging the use of time tours to generate revenue to keep the institute going when finances were low. And this is where the relationship begins between the Dino Institute and dinosaurs. Seeing that the institute was running low on funding, the Dinosaurs company stepped in and offered a seemingly dream solution. Not only would they take on the responsibility of running the tours, allowing the researchers to focus on their work, but they would also offer additional funding for bigger, better and more ambitious research projects. As a struggling scientific institute, they of course accepted and began to operate under the Dinosaurs brand. As part of their plan to offer more immersive tours, Dinosaurs began to take foreign materials to the past to create transport systems and enclosures for the creatures that they'll be showcasing, effectively creating a zoo in the past that guests could time travel to see real dinosaurs in their almost natural habitats. This is what you see in the Dinosaurs ride. The constant back and forth put strain on the somewhat basic time travel system that the Dino Institute had been using, and issues began to present themselves. At first, the only issue was location-based, with researchers and construction teams landing a mile or two away from the intended drop point. But quickly, the issues became more temporal, with the teams landing hours, then days, then weeks away from the intended landing point. Then, on the final journey, the entire system collapsed, leaving the Dino Institute research team who had been sent to investigate the ruptures stranded in the past. Not wanting to be associated with any potential bad press following the incident, Dinosaurs distanced itself from the Dino Institute, withdrew all funding effective immediately. You may notice, however, that Dinosaurs are still operating their tours to the past despite this. This is because in their departure, the company took all of the existing research, presenting the collapse as an unfortunate consequence of pioneering, and built a new time system, continuing the work despite the risks demonstrated. So the ride begins in a now abandoned Dino Institute building, boarded up and covered in moss. Much like today, the building will be set back into the tree line, tucked away from the grandeur of the Dinosaurs empire. The artifacts that once filled the cabinets have been sold, and electricity barely flows through the building. When you enter the pre-show room, you'll see a desk covered in papers, trophies and photos of happy teams. Now a more distinguished pre-show than before, the doors will close behind guests before the video starts playing, and the whole show will feel very reminiscent of the Darren Brown Ghost Train pre-show from Thorpe Park. As the only remaining researcher at the defunct Dino Institute, a projection of a weathered Dr. Seeker appears, telling guests the story of how the Dino Institute fell from grace and how it, and he, ended up here. After his team got stranded in the past and without adequate resources or funding, he managed to generate a portal of his own to facilitate a final journey to retrieve them. At this point, it's fair to assume that Seeker doesn't know if they survived the trip. And this is really important, as in a video you'll see coming up soon, you'll see a really big deep dive into Seeker's character and his intentions. So it's nice to see how they changed too, and how he's willing to put himself in danger, even if he's uncertain on something. But due to his lack of resources, the portal that he took to get back collapsed after he passed through it. So now it's our job to go into the past and save him and his team. He figured this may have happened, so before he set off, he sent out a preemptive plea for help and prepared a vehicle for us, filled with stolen Dinosaurs technology and necessary supplies. The ride, then following a very similar format to the ride now, takes you back to the Cretaceous period. When you first land, evidence of failed research attempts including crashed and overturned vehicles can be seen, and Dr. Seeker will then come over the radio, guiding you through the ride to the location where he and his team are, waiting for you to haul them out. You'll still be introduced to a couple of dinosaurs as you go around, adding a little bit of edutainment to the mix. But this ride, similar to the original Countdown to Extinction soft opening audio, is mostly story and drama driven. I've also borrowed a few other elements from various versions of the ride, including the stop and start motion, the general low lighting induced darkness, a meteor strike effect, and my personal favourite, dinosaurs running on the track in front of the vehicles. Overall, the ride does feel a little removed from what we've typically seen at Animal Kingdom, but I wanted to explore some of the trouble caused by our pursuits of greatness, and how the push for more can sometimes be disastrous. I understand that this one may not go down so well, based on how poorly some of the human intervention storylines have performed long term in other attractions, like the poachers on Kilimanjaro Safari, or the direct consequences of human behaviour seen on Cali River Rapids, but I love the idea of such a stark contrast between the perfectly crafted tour industry and the broken system left in its wake. While we're on this, I wanted to take you back to the description of the original ride as told by Joe Rhode. Again, though not intentionally, there are plenty of comparisons to be drawn between the original ride brief outline and the one in this video. The only major difference is that instead of rescuing a dinosaur from extinction, you're rescuing the research teams. All of the other conditions are the same, but it's that pursuit which really creates the stakes. But I'll let other Joe tell you that.
Countdown to Extinction is a journey back in time, sending us back on a rescue mission to save a dinosaur from the moment of extinction as this giant asteroid hurtles towards Earth and threatens to obliterate all life at the end of the age of dinosaurs. So that's just kind of high speed in the dark with asteroids landing all around us and big dinosaurs jumping out at you.
So that is my Dinoland. Now armed with 5 attractions, including a dual-purpose show building and a new thrill ride, I think it ticks the box of everything required of a new land. Between a strong layered narrative, attractions for thrill seekers and families alike, and a respect for what came before and what will inevitably follow, I'm confident that this would extend the life of the area by at least a decade or two. I also don't think it's too insurmountable. It would take time to completely overhaul the area, whether it's for an IP integration or for something else like this. But it would be easy to stagger the opening of attractions should the dinosaur track finally be removed, or just to accommodate these changes. If Disney decided to take out Chester and Hester's Dinorama first to bring in Dino Flights and then the Excavator, the remaining, arguably more complex work on the dark rides could be done as a second phase, should there be any concern about capacity management. And this seems to be what's happening with the real version of events with Encanto and Indiana Jones. And this could also work as a great opportunity to build up the lore of the land, framing this as fundraising or a crowdsourcing period, while the Dino Tours company on opening their newest attraction, and this could easily be done with a big ceremony. To conclude, Disney had a great opportunity to overhaul Dinoland into something new yet nostalgic, and a lot of people would love to keep intellectual properties out of Animal Kingdom, with a focus on real animals instead. I think this could be a fun way to breathe some life back into the area, while honouring the visions and ambitions of the past. But alas, finalised plans have been released and the closure dates have been announced, so realistically this wouldn't and will never happen. But despite this, I hope you've enjoyed this proposed overhaul of Dinoland USA. So that's all from me. Be sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below as to what you'd like to see from Dinoland and even Animal Kingdom as a whole. Thank you so much for watching, and see you real soon.